I'm going to take a different angle. How does it make you feel as somebody who's 25 years old to know that your generation is going to pay the bill for everything that's happened right now? We have $40 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
And yet your generation is going to pay the price.
Yeah, I think that's the sad thing is my generation's the one who's affected the most from this fraud and from the national debt. It's extremely hard for anyone my age to buy a home, even just to be able to accumulate the money to have a down payment inside your bank account. It's very, very hard. It's not racist, but politically it can be seen as racist. They may label you as Islamophobic or a racist, quite frankly. Ilhan Omar should be disgraced of what she did to the Somali population.
Undercover footage exposes an absolute underworld of election fraud, and downtown Los Angeles citizen journalists walked right into the Skid Row petition scheme, catching cash for signatures operations and fake voter registries on tape. The corruption is staggering. Let us roll the tape.
Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. And let me just point out again for the record that I think preventing fraud in government should be completely nonpartisan. It's not a Democrat issue or a Republican issue, yet almost the entirety of the Republican dais is filled with people sitting here listening to the entire hearing, and literally the entire Democrat dais is empty. I think that's, quite frankly, a disgrace. I think it's a disgrace to the people who pay taxes to know that there's an entire party that does not care whether taxpayer money is burnt. I think it's absolutely, completely outrageous. Mr. Shirley, I'll start with you. The previous Controller General of the GAO had been in office since 2011. What were you doing in 2011?
Playing football and basketball.
And what grade were you in?
At that time, I was 9 years old. So.
9? Gotcha. Yeah. So you were 9 years old, and this person served for 15 years in government. We have this idea that maybe we double down on that process that failed for 15 years, that somehow we'd be better off, and yet you went in at your risk and exposed fraud. I'm going to take a different angle. How does it make you feel as somebody who's 25 years old to know that your generation is going to pay the bill for everything that's happened right now? We have $40 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
And yet your generation is going to pay the price.
Yeah, I think that's the sad thing is my generation's the one who's affected the most from this fraud and from the national debt. It's extremely hard for anyone my age to buy a home, even just to be able to accumulate the money to have a down payment inside your bank account. It's very, very hard. And so when you see a fraudster who literally opens up a Leering Center and they receive $1.9 million, and that was going on for years, and no one ever did anything. We had all this oversight. We had everyone knew about the fraud, but everyone was too afraid to talk about the fraud because of what would happen to them.
And what do you mean what would happen to them? Is it impolite to say that somebody's defrauding the government because there's of some certain race or gender or national origin? Is that somehow racist to say you should not steal money from the federal government?
It's not racist, but politically it can be seen as racist. They may label you as Islamophobic or a racist, quite frankly.
Well, I think profiles in courage wouldn't be something that would be written about the current members of the Democrat Party, for sure. And because, again, you think you would agree that they're just afraid of being labeled that way, and that fear drives them away from even attending a hearing like today?
Yeah, definitely. And it's very sad to see that they put that's their priorities, is to make sure that they're not labeled as a racist or Islamophobic for exposing fraud or for exposing what's happening inside a community. Quite frankly, they use the Somali population to commit the fraud. Ilhan Omar should be disgraced of what she did to the Somali population.
And when you look at people in your generation can't afford a car, can't afford a house, don't see how in the future you'd be able to retire with any kind of dignity, and yet somebody can break into our country illegally, be provided a luxury hotel room in New York, 3 meals a day, maid service once a week, free education, free health care. What goes through your head when you think about that?
Like, how does this happen? We're putting foreigners oftentimes above American citizens, and it's very, very sad to see.
And Mr. Hetler-Gadet, I want to drill back down to the numbers you provided because I want to make sure I heard them correctly. You talked about, again, we're here to talk about fraud. We can talk about waste in a different hearing. We're here to talk about fraud. You mentioned in 2025, what was the number that you said? You knew the numbers off the top of your head pretty well. It's impressive.
GAO estimated that in fiscal year 2025, we issued $186 billion in improper payments.
So $186 billion in 2025. From 17 to 20, which is President Trump's first term, that number by GAO is estimated to be $672 billion. Does that sound right?
I don't have
same
that
GAO.
number off the top of my head, but
Sounds right?
Yeah.
Yeah, generally. Again, GAO, citing their numbers. And from 2020 to 2024, that number under Biden was $925 billion.
so I would point out 2020 is still the Trump administration.
No, this is fiscal year, so this would start October
gotcha.
1st.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a 38% increase, and it's been massively cut back by President Trump in his second term. I don't know that that's the greatest case to be made, that the entire issue is because we have these inspector generals that have failed dramatically since the time Nick Shirley was playing basketball in his driveway when he was 9 years old. I think what we need to do here, Mr. Chairman, is take this topic very seriously. I think the American people are sick and tired of hearings, honestly. I think they need to see people who are held accountable, that go to jail. And until we do that, I don't know that we have the confidence of people. I feel badly for next generation, honestly. I don't know how they look at it and say, this government's just failing us. And the sense of disenfranchisement with the American government. I mean, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that Democrats care so little about this topic that they don't even show up. They didn't show up at your session either, Senator Johnson, when we talked about this exact topic in your committee. And ultimately, if your elected leaders don't give a crap about how government spends money, it's an indictment on that. And even worse, the media just won't even talk about it. There will be more stories on CNN tonight about the reflecting pond being empty than the fact that you had a hearing today about trillions of dollars of fraud. And that is the problem. The media is complicit. The Democrats are complicit because that's ultimately, you have to think, what keeps them in power. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
America was built and created by strong men and women who loved America and never would have thought to rob, steal, or cheat from its very own citizens. Unfortunately, today, America's good faith has been abused by others, often foreigners who seek to harm, rob, and cheat America. Through my efforts, I've exposed billions of dollars of fraud and helped save America hundreds of billions for years to come. When we talk about fraud, we are talking about money that is being stolen from hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. This issue has nothing to do with political parties. No dollar says Republican or Democrat on it. When a fraudster commits fraud, he or she steals from all of us. Last December, I published a 43-minute-long video exposing widespread fraud in Minnesota. That video became one of the most viewed videos in internet history and gained over 4 billion views in just 7 days across all forms of media. The fraud was so obvious that the fraudsters weren't even trying to hide it. The infamous Quality Learning Center was born, and that video has become one of the most consequential videos in American history by the amount of legislation it has created. Since posting it, over 30 bills have been created and introduced in Congress regarding fraud. A new fraud task force has been created, and the Treasury is working on new systems to stop fraud at unprecedented levels. I helped ignite a war on fraud across the country. People often wonder, how come this fraud became so big and how come it becomes so rampant? And the reason is because no one actually ever really looked into it. When Elon Musk offered to help by creating Doge, people burned his factories, bombed his cars, and politicians even celebrated his company's stock going down. Elon was right when he said the fraudsters complained the loudest. By exposing the fraud, I actually also exposed the politicians and media who worked for years to cover it up. Governor Tim Walz labeled my work as white supremacy and called me a far-right delusional conspiracy theorist. Meanwhile, he dropped out of re-election, and he even said he has ended his political career. Now, the highest government-funded daycare in Minnesota has pleaded guilty to daycare fraud, and the largest autism bust in American history has been exposed. Where is Tim Walz in the media now? It just so happens that over 80% of the fraud committed in Minnesota is by the Somali population. After Minnesota, I exposed widespread fraud in California within the daycare and hospice community, where an impossible 1/3 of Americans on hospice care were set to die in Los Angeles. The next day, the governor, Gavin Newsom, posted an AI-generated image of myself trying to mock and discredit my work. Only days later, he and his attorney general both tried to take credit for exposing the fraud. Now the Attorney General's wife has created a bill that would make it criminal to expose fraud. The Stop Nick Shirley Act, also known as AB 2624, will help fraudsters cover up their crimes and prevent themselves from being exposed, specifically in immigrant communities. Politicians often use immigrant communities to commit fraud. Why would they allow this to happen? In California, Medi-Cal, their Medicaid program, has now more than doubled from $108 billion in 2022 to a proposed $222 billion, while enrollment has only rose by less than 1%. The system is filled with bad actors and fraudsters. In New York City, government-funded adult daycares pay for elderly Koreans and Chinese to play ping pong and do tai chi at the taxpayer's expense. An impossible number of patients are registered, and those patients receive kickbacks for attending and signing up their friends. Over $2 billion has gone to these fraudsters at the taxpayer's expense. And I'm just one person doing the work of many people. If the government and media is not going to do their job to help America, it's the responsibility of strong men and women, however old they may be, to do it. I am doing it. Despite the threats and burdens that come, it must be done. I'm doing it with the help of everyday Americans that government-paid officials are supposed to do. And the media teams across the country have millions of dollars to do this, yet they don't look into this fraud. They've actually quite literally failed us. If we as Americans do not stand up to protect our country, we will lose our country. Fraud is so rampant in the United States, I could go to all 50 states and uncover millions of dollars of tax dollars being defrauded, wasted, and abused. It is my wish while sitting in front of you guys today that you take action and help Americans by cracking down on all of the fraud, and to simply put Americans first.
Let's break down what just happened. Nick Shirley laid out the explosive findings from his viral investigations, exposing how billions in taxpayer dollars are being siphoned off through fraudulent programs across the country centered right out of Minnesota. Shirley didn't hesitate to point the finger at Washington leadership, declaring flat out that Reper Ilhan Omar should be completely disgraced for what happened to the Somali population in her own district, where fraudsters exploited community programs to loot millions. When asked how it feels for his 25-year-old generation to inherit a crushing $40 trillion national debt while watching everyday citizens struggle just to save for a down payment on a home, Shirley exposed the cowardice in Washington. He laid bare the chilling reality. Fraud ran rampant for years because people were too terrified of being smeared as racist or Islamophobic to expose what was happening right in front of them. The hearing took an even sharper turn as members highlighted the total absence of accountability, and the empty chairs across the aisle where opposing lawmakers skipped the hearing entirely. Shirley proved that independent investigators and everyday citizens are now forced to do the job that elected officials and paid bureaucrats refuse to do. Despite facing political attacks and media blackouts, Shirley's work has already ignited a nationwide war on fraud. If you're tired of billions of dollars in taxpayer money being stolen while hard